May 1st, 2012. Portland, Oregon. FBI agents finally capture one of America's most wanted fugitives. But just 3 years earlier, this same man was posing for photos with the President of the United States. He raised over $100 million for Navy veterans, respected charity leader, trusted by thousands of donors. But here's the thing, nobody knew his real name. Not the FBI, not the donors he scammed, not even the Secret Service when he posed with the President. Bobby Thompson, Harvard lawyer, Navy commander, Christian minister, all fake. He had more than 19 fake IDs. Every single identity, a lie. This is the story of a man who nearly pulled off the perfect charity scam, and how one Google search brought down America's most wanted fraudster. Meet Bobby Charles Thompson, or at least that's what he wanted you to call him. Lieutenant Commander Bobby Thompson, to be precise. Navy veteran, patriot, founder of the U.S. Navy Veterans Association. The kind of guy who'd show up at Republican fundraisers with a firm handshake and a fat check. And my God, did the politicians love him. George W. Bush got a photo with Bobby. Top Republicans, they all smiled for the camera with good old Commander Thompson. Why wouldn't they? Between 2002 and 2010, Bobby and his organization donated hundreds of thousands to conservative political candidates, including $55,000 to Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli and $10,000 to Representative Michelle Bachmann, Republican Minnesota. See, that's what most people don't understand about political influence. You don't need millions to buy credibility. You just need to be strategic. A 5-figure donation here, a photo op there, suddenly you're untouchable. Who's going to investigate a charity when the guy running it has pictures with half of Washington on his wall? Bobby Thompson understood this perfectly. He didn't just donate money. He bought legitimacy. Politicians became his unwitting character references. After all, if he's good enough for a former president, he must be legitimate, right? Actually, no. Bobby Thompson had this peculiar habit. He never stayed in one place too long. Never let anyone get too close. And if you looked carefully at those political photos, you'd notice something odd. He always positioned himself slightly away from the center, like someone ready to disappear at a moment's notice. Because Bobby Thompson didn't actually exist. The real man behind that name, his story was about to get much, much stranger. Let me tell you about John Donald Cody, Harvard Law School graduate, class of 1972, former U.S. Army intelligence officer with top secret clearance, member of the Arizona Bar, the kind of resume that opens up doors anywhere in America. But in 1984, Cody was practicing law in Arizona when investigators discovered he'd stolen nearly $100,000 from his clients. Now, most lawyers who get caught with their hand in the cookie jar might try to negotiate, maybe cut a deal. Not Cody. He did something far more interesting. He vanished completely. For the next 18 years, John Donald Cody ceased to exist. No credit cards, no bank accounts, no traffic tickets, nothing. It's like he'd been trained to disappear, which, given his military intelligence background, he probably had been. Think about that for a second. This wasn't some small-time crook on the run. This was a Harvard-educated lawyer with intelligence training who knew exactly how to become a ghost. And for nearly 2 decades, that's exactly what he was. Until 2002, when a man calling himself Bobby Thompson registered a charity in Florida. A charity dedicated to helping Navy veterans. Because if you're going to reinvent yourself, why not wrap yourself in the flag while you're at it? The U.S. Navy Veterans Association was born in a duplex apartment in Tampa, Florida. The website was beautiful, professional. It claimed 41 state chapters, 66,000 members nationwide, photos of smiling veterans, testimonials from grateful families, detailed descriptions of assistance programs. There was just one small problem. None of it was real. Bobby understood how charities work in America. Nobody actually checks. The IRS is overwhelmed. State regulators are understaffed and underfunded. As long as you file the right paperwork and don't make too much noise, you can operate for years without anyone looking too closely. So Bobby hired telemarketing firms. Not one or two, dozens of them across the country. These companies would cold call Americans, especially the elderly. And did you know that telemarketers kept between 60 and 85% of every donation as their fee? Let that sink in. Even if this had been a real charity, 85 cents of every dollar would never have reached a veteran anyway. But in the world of American charity telemarketing, this is completely legal. The industry generates billions in donations every year, and most donors have no idea how little actually makes it to the cause. Bobby Thompson had found the perfect scam. He was exploiting a system that was already broken, hiding in plain sight among thousands of other questionable charities. After all, who would dare question a charity supporting Navy veterans? Between 2002 and 2010, the donations rolled in like a tsunami. $100 million. From Ohio to Florida, from Virginia, from everywhere. Retired veterans sending $20 checks. Wealthy patriots writing six-figure donations. Corporate sponsors trying to show their support for the troops. Want to know how much actually went to veterans? Less than 1%. Out of $100 million, actual veterans received maybe a few thousand in random tiny grants. Just enough for Bobby to claim the charity did something. The rest disappeared into a maze of fake vendors, shell companies, and Bobby's personal accounts. But he was smart enough to know that stealing money is easy. Keeping it is hard. So he did what any good criminal does. He bought protection. Not from the mob, but from something far more powerful. The political establishment. Remember those donations to Ken Cuccinelli in Virginia? When reporters started asking questions about the U.S. Navy Veterans Association, Cuccinelli's office was curiously slow to investigate. Same story in Ohio, where Bobby had strategically donated to key political figures. It's amazing how bureaucratic wheels can grind to a halt when the person you're investigating is funding your campaign. This is called affinity fraud, and it's devastatingly effective. You target a specific group, in this case military supporters and conservatives, and wrap yourself in their symbols, their language, their values. The uniform becomes your camouflage. Patriotism becomes your shield. And anyone who questions you? Well, they must hate veterans. The scam was perfect, bulletproof, untouchable. Until two journalists in Florida decided to knock on his door. One day, Jeff Testerman, a reporter at the St. Petersburg Times, now the Tampa Bay Times, was working on a story about a county official he believed had lied about his military record. The official had gotten a campaign contribution from the Navy Veterans Association, and Testerman decided to visit Thompson's condo for a quote. But the more he dug, the stranger things became. He found no evidence that Thompson had been in the military, and no one from the association would return his calls. With a researcher, John Martin, Testerman searched for 85 directors, officials, and auditors listed on the forms filed with the IRS. They verified the existence of only one, Bobby Thompson. They also discovered that the address of many of the group's state chapters were simply P.O. boxes. Its Washington headquarters, 1718 M Street Northwest, number 275, was a rented mailbox at a UPS store. The reporters finally published their exposés in March 2010. Multi-million-dollar nonprofit charity for Navy veterans steeped in secrecy, the first headline read. The reporters revealed the non-existent headquarters and chapters, the fact that, in the end, the searches for people and documents all came back to one man. Within days, Bobby Thompson performed his signature move. He vanished. The apartment was empty. The phone's disconnected. The man who'd collected $100 million in the name of Navy veterans had disappeared like smoke. Mac Murray was one of the last people to see Thompson before he walked out of a New York City hotel lobby and disappeared in 2010. From 2010 to 2012, Bobby Thompson became a ghost story with a twist. Everyone was looking for him, but he kept popping up in the strangest places. A boarding house in Arizona, a cheap motel in Indiana, always paying cash, always using different names, always one step ahead. The U.S. Marshals Service added him to their most wanted list. His face appeared on wanted posters across the country. America's Most Wanted ran a segment on him. For a man who'd spent years taking photos with politicians, Bobby Thompson had become famously camera shy. What made him so hard to catch is that this wasn't his first disappearing act. Remember, John Donald Cody had been on the run since 1984. This man had literally decades of experience living off the grid. He knew how to forge documents, how to create new identities, how to move through America without leaving digital footprints. The marshals knew they needed something special to catch him. Some detail, some habit, some weakness that would give him away. And after months of investigation, they found it. In May 2012, U.S. Marshals closed in on a modest apartment in Portland, Oregon. The man inside had been living quietly under a stolen identity, paying rent in cash, keeping to himself. When the marshals entered, he didn't resist. No panic, no fight, just a strange little smile and silence. The search turned up bundles of cash and a stack of fake IDs, each with Cody's face but a different name. It was the same tactic he had used for years, creating new versions of himself every time the law got too close. At the police station, he refused to give his real name, refused to acknowledge he was Bobby Thompson, or John Donald Cody, or any of the dozen other identities they'd linked to him. He signed every document as Mr. X, like some comic book villain who'd forgotten this was real life. But fingerprints told the truth. After years of hiding in plain sight, the architect of one of America's biggest charity frauds was finally in custody. And once locked in a jail cell, Cody began filling page after page with handwritten motions. Interestingly, Cody claimed in court filings that he's still working as a non-official cover agent for the CIA, and that the charity is part of a secret operation. According to him, the whole charity was a covert operation to funnel money to Republican politicians and influence elections. The donations weren't theft, they were operational funds. The fake identities weren't fraud, they were intelligence tradecraft. Of course, prosecutors dismissed all of this as the delusions of a desperate criminal. But Cody did have verified military intelligence experience. He did have the kind of training that would explain his ability to disappear for decades. Was he completely insane? Maybe. But even paranoid delusions can contain grains of truth. And in the world of intelligence, the line between operative and criminal has always been blurrier than we'd like to admit. Whether he was a rogue spy or just a gifted liar, one thing was certain. The evidence against him was overwhelming. 19 fake identities, forged financial documents, $100 million that had vanished into thin air. No amount of conspiracy theories could explain that away. The trial of the United States versus John Donald Cody, aka Bobby Thompson, aka Mr. X, was supposed to be straightforward. Mountains of evidence, clear financial records, dozens of victims ready to testify. Should have been a slam dunk for the prosecution. But Cody turned his trial into performance art. He showed up to court in a crisp suit, clean shaven, looking every inch the respectable veteran he'd pretended to be. Then he opened his mouth, and chaos followed. He rambled about CIA operations. He filed bizarre motions, claiming the court had no jurisdiction because he was a sovereign citizen. He insisted on representing himself, then refused to present any coherent defense. Prosecutors showed how donations meant for veterans went straight into Cody's personal accounts. They presented the dozens of fake IDs, each with Cody's photo but different names. Cody sat there, occasionally scribbling notes, sometimes smirking, never testifying. When it came time for closing arguments, he offered almost nothing. 4 years of running one of America's largest charity frauds, and his final defense was silence. The jury deliberated less than 2 hours. Guilty on all 23 counts: racketeering, theft, money laundering, identity fraud. The whole catalog of white-collar crime. Judge Stephen Gall sentenced Cody to 28 years in prison and ordered him to pay more than $6.3 million in fines and investigation costs. Ohio Attorney General Mike DeWine didn't mince words either. It's horrible when a scammer victimizes people, but to do it under the cover story of helping veterans is just plain evil. The sentence exposed a massive regulatory failure. How does someone run a fake charity for 8 years without anyone noticing? How do you collect $100 million with zero oversight? The answer is disturbingly simple. Charity regulation in America is a joke. The IRS is too overwhelmed to investigate more than a tiny fraction of nonprofits. State regulators are underfunded and understaffed, and telemarketing laws are so full of loopholes, you could drive a $100 million scam right through them. Cody didn't just exploit people's patriotism. He exploited a system designed to fail. A system where tax-exempt status is easy to get and almost impossible to lose. Here's the $100 million question. Literally. Investigators said they found more than $980,000 in his suitcase located in an Oregon storage unit. They froze a few bank accounts with modest amounts. Veterans charities have received $101,000 that authorities seized from bank accounts associated with Cody or the charity. But what about the other $98 million? Gone. Vanished. Some of it went to those telemarketing firms. Remember, they kept up to 85% of donations right off the top. Some went to political campaigns, buying Cody protection and credibility. Some probably went to funding his life on the run, though living in boarding houses and dive bars isn't exactly expensive. But tens of millions of dollars are simply unaccounted for. Investigators found evidence of wire transfers to offshore accounts, shell companies that led nowhere, financial dead ends that suggested someone with intelligence training had hidden that money very, very well. There's a theory in investigators that Cody had help, that he wasn't working alone, that somewhere out there, other people are sitting on portions of that missing fortune. But Cody never gave up any accomplices, never cooperated, never explained where the money went. Maybe it's buried in some storage unit, waiting for a release day he'll never see. Maybe it's scattered across a dozen Caribbean banks under names we'll never know. Or maybe, and this is the truly depressing possibility, maybe he just spent it. $100 million over 8 years is only $12 million a year. For a man funding a fake life, buying political influence, and maintaining multiple identities, that money could simply be gone. Even after the conviction, after all the investigations, massive questions remain. Questions that suggest this story bigger than just one man with a gift for disappearing. First, how did Cody's fingerprints not immediately match FBI databases? He'd been on their wanted list since 1984. He'd been arrested in 2012, yet it took weeks to confirm his identity. Some investigators believe his prints had been deliberately obscured in the system, but by whom and why? Second, those political connections. Did politicians know something was off about Bobby Thompson? Or were they just willfully blind to warning signs because the checks kept clearing? The fact that multiple state attorney generals were slow to investigate even after receiving complaints, was that incompetence or something worse? Third, the CIA claims. Yes, they sound insane. But Cody did have verified intelligence training. He did demonstrate tradecraft consistent with someone who'd worked in that world. Was the charity scam his own criminal enterprise? Or was it something that started legitimate and went rogue? The CIA naturally denies everything, but then again, they would, wouldn't they? Here's what we do know. The U.S. Navy Veterans Association wasn't the only fake veterans charity operating in America. It wasn't even the biggest. Right now, today, there are hundreds of questionable charities using similar tactics, exploiting the same regulatory gaps, targeting the same vulnerable populations. The system that allowed Cody to operate for 8 years hasn't been fixed. The telemarketing laws haven't changed. The IRS still doesn't have the resources to properly investigate nonprofits. State regulators are still overwhelmed. Everything that made this scam possible is still in place, waiting for the next John Donald Cody. The original one sits in federal prison today, but his legacy isn't behind bars. It's in every legitimate veterans charity that now struggles to raise funds because donors don't trust anymore. It's in every real nonprofit that has to spend money proving they're not a scam. He didn't just steal $100 million. He stole something more valuable. Trust. The belief that when Americans want to help their heroes, that help actually reaches them. The real tragedy isn't that one man fooled America. It's that America made it so easy to be fooled. In a country that runs on trust, we've built systems that reward liars. We've created regulations so weak that following them is optional. We've made oversight so sparse that criminals don't need to be clever. They just need to be patient. Somewhere out there, the next Bobby Thompson is taking notes, seeing the gaps Cody exposed, planning the next patriotic disguise for pure greed. The hunt for America's most wanted charity scammer is over. But the hunting ground he exposed, that's still wide open. And that should terrify us all.